That's great. Glad he's doing well. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Milwaukee Sports Performance Podcast. I'm joined today by Eli Hoyt. Eli is a multi-time kinetic graduate that just finished up his season at Madison College as a pitcher, and has been kind enough to come on and talk a little bit about his Tommy John rehab process. So Eli, welcome to the show. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been something I've been eager about doing and eager about talking about.
Yeah, sharing some experiences.
I have a chance to share a lot of things that I've encountered.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I always like to start just a little bit of background. People don't know your story, but a little bit of your baseball journey and kind of how you ended up at Madison ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, to sum up my baseball journey, I don't think a bumpy road does it any justice. Just to kind of overarch it all. But man, where do I start my baseball journey? I guess I could take you back to high school, open up the yearbook a little bit. Originally I was committed to Hawaii out of high school, and my senior year I suffered a knee injury, which complicated things a little bit. So I was able to get the opportunity to kind of have a chance to play at Madison and bounce back from that knee surgery. And I will forever be grateful for that opportunity at Madison College, and the chance that they gave me to come and, kind of work things out and compete at that level, which is all I really wanted.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I'd be curious, just like, young Eli Hoyt, excited, D1 commit, gonna go live the island life on Hawaii, to, probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like a lot of high schoolers, like when you're setting your goals, like very few kids are like waking up as an 8th grader or 9th grader be like, I want to be a starting pitcher at a JUCO, right?
Sure.
Like most kids want to go D1, but I'd be curious, like now that you're kind of a veteran college baseball player at this point, how's your perspective on college baseball and goals kind of change from a high schooler to now?
Yeah, it's funny that you say veteran. Known as the old wise third year on my junior college team. But there certainly has been a stigma around junior college athletics as a whole, not necessarily just baseball, that I feel like doesn't need that kind of stigma.
Yeah.
Yes, it is not the Division I level, but it's also something completely different, where if you give yourself a chance to immerse yourself in that, you are benefited by ways you wouldn't ever imagine. And I had the privilege of having that happen to me. And my perspective as a young high schooler kind of morphed into what it is today by just watching.
Yeah.
By just watching people. I didn't get a chance to play much in high school.
Yeah.
Due to circumstances that were out of my control. But I always watched the college game. I watched people play the college game. I had a lot of friends go into the college game, and from that, I knew it was a little bit more intense than what the high school game was, and I knew it had a lot faster pace. So I think the mentality I had going into college ball was observe as much as you can, just try to take a step back and watch other people and learn from other people.
Yeah.
Practice it by yourself, give yourself time to do mental reps, and then that kind of launched myself into a phase of maturity, a phase of growth in the game, just surrounded by other people that allow you to do that, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I think it's just a good perspective. I mean, I don't know, I think you can look around Wisconsin and see a lot of kids, like it's become a great baseball state where lots of kids are committing to these big schools out of high school, and it's a great Instagram announcement.
Yes.
And it's really cool for them. They work really hard and deserve it. As we've been talking to people, it's like I just sometimes ask kids, like, are you fully developed? 'Cause some of these programs, like, they want these kids to come in throwing hard, ready to compete, be a weekend starter. And if you don't do that, especially with the new transfer rules, they're just going to get someone else.
And I think that's kind of how the game has evolved to what it is today, where these colleges aren't looking necessarily at projectability only. It's projectability and what can you do for me now?
Right.
What have you done in your travel ball circuit? And getting a kid that is ready to play as soon as possible, maybe on campus, instead of saying, hey, you're going to take 2 years to develop under our program, and then you're going to dominate.
Right.
And especially with the state of college baseball as it is now. I know the coaching carousel's been blowing up the last few days, and especially in the transfer portal. I think the last time I looked, there was some jaw-dropping number about how there was almost or nearly 1,600 kids in the transfer portal alone, and I think it opened up yesterday. So it's certainly a crazy time in college baseball, but I think there are definitely steps you can do as a high schooler to set yourself apart, but doing that in a way where it's healthy, doing that in a way where you're protecting yourself, at the risk reward of getting a scholarship.
And if you're a kid that needs to develop a little bit more, like JUCOs, NAIA schools, lower level colleges can be like places that, like a Madison that has shown that they can take players, come for 2 years, they emerge as better pitchers, better players, and now you're ready to go somewhere else as a junior and have a chance to be that star that you would have gone to the same school when you were in senior in high school, you wouldn't have been ready, and you would end up being like the transfer out versus maybe going somewhere that you can learn, have success, compete, develop, and now you can go transfer in and be the dude at that point in time.
The track record is there certainly for Madison. And I think it has a lot of success because of the people that have gone there and bought into what's being taught there. And I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing to go the junior college route, because you give yourself time to develop and you give yourself the opportunity to play right away, both simultaneously. And I think a lot of people that have the chance to go D1 to say, oh, I went D1, oh, I get to make an Instagram post. Sometimes that's where the ego part of it comes in, and you do want to boost your ego. I mean, sometimes it's hard not to, especially when a game, in this game.
Absolutely.
But I get both sides of that argument, and both sides of, because I've been on both sides of that argument.
Absolutely.
But no, there's both opportunities at both levels, and there's always downsides at both levels too.
No, for sure. Well, unfortunately, part of your baseball journey has been overcoming injuries, which you've sort of referenced, and dating back to high school with the knee injury, and then once you were at Madison, initially you strained your UCL, managed it conservatively, got back, set a new PR of Mound velocity through 96 for the first time, and then ultimately ended up re-injuring your elbow kind of after a season, had to go through Tommy John surgery about a year later. So be curious what your perspective is on how that conservative rehab process was, what it was like, and would you change anything kind of looking back at that initial injury time period?
I still think the conservative approach that we took was the right approach, in my opinion. I like the things that we did, the band work, the strength work. I ultimately came out of that feeling much stronger than I had coming in, which, you always feel like, all right, now I can hit the ground running, I'm stronger, let's go. But it was a process that forced me to be patient, right? And I remember having numerous conversations with you. It's just like, all right, I just want to grip it and rip it. You're like, no, you can't do that. But that's something I haven't been great at, is finding the patience. And I think this kind of conservative approach allowed me to take a step back and kind of learn when to be patient, when not to be patient, in as far as the rehab process goes. It helped me learn kind of the learning curve of patience that I needed to overcome to improve my game and to prove who I am as a person, to have more success moving forward, because I think patience is virtue.
No, I agree, and I'm glad you have that perspective. I think the easy easy route is some people could look at it and say like, oh, it didn't work because I ended up, injuring my elbow again. It's like, well, I mean, you did get back, you were able to return, compete, play a season, set a new Mound PR, like do really well.
And I think it ended up where I was in a spot, I was like, all right, I'm feeling really good.
Yeah.
And then, all arm injuries are a precursor to the new arm injuries. And I just happened to suffer a new, different arm injury to the same ligament. I think we took all the right steps to, heal it, and I think it was healed.
Yeah, you were back.
Yeah, you could say I was back.
You were.
And then, who knows what could happen? That's a whole can of worms right there. But
there's nothing to say that. I think it's good that you have that mindset because you can play a what if game a million times. It's like, well, what if you would have had the Tommy John the first time and still could have popped it the second time? Now you're having. We're seeing these Tommy John injuries fail more quickly than in years past with guys who are throwing harder. It's like there's still no guarantee on either side. So no, I think that's really interesting. Just a good thing for people to hear and go through as they're like making that decision that like you can't just you have to define success sometimes on like the process you go through and like were you happy with the process. Like the outcome sometimes it's out of your control, right? Like and all you can do is like stick to trying to kind of do the right thing at each step of the way and then you live with the results. So once you did have the injury, kind of found out completely torn this time rather than partially torn, need to have the Tommy John surgery. What was the process like in terms of picking a doctor, deciding on the surgical procedure, and kind of going through those initial steps?
I had a lot of help in that department. It's definitely one I sought out a lot of opinions for. So I saw 3 surgeons, all who I trusted, doing these reconstructive surgery, and I got their opinion. All 3 thought that I was best suited for a reconstructive surgery versus an internal brace surgery, just because I wasn't a strong candidate based off what part of my ligament was torn, where it was torn. I remember talking to numerous of PTs. We had extensive conversations about this. Oftentimes I'd come in and we wouldn't even do any physical activity. We would just talk, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yes.
But I remember just getting a lot of opinions on it, trying to learn, trying to know as much as I could before I chose to, go the route I did.
Yeah, I think that's it's really important to like. And there's no one right doctor. There's no one, there's nationally known guys. There's things like that. But part of it's just comfort level, and it's talking to enough people where you are like, yeah, this is the right guy, right approach, right doctor for me. And maybe that's not for everyone else, but being kind of comfortable with your decision that way. So, is there kind of 20/20 hindsight looking back at it after you return? Anything that you wish you would have done differently or knew more about leading up to the surgery?
I guess I could say hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe put a little bit more on emphasis on specific mechanics, timing of the arm with the front foot strike, sequencing, the way my hips move. But honestly, I just think it was more of one of those things that, the body wasn't quite ready to handle that stress that my arm was producing, which at the end of the day is okay. Like, that happened. I know there was stuff that you could have gone back and say should, could have, would have. I could have maybe prevented this, but I am not a person to be like, oh, should, could have, would have done this.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Ultimately, you learn from that and learn what you can do better. Now having the surgery, it's like, okay, let's address everything. I know it may be late to address everything, but at that point, I can't control what's already happened. I can only control what I can do moving forward, and I think that's kind of the perspective that I have to have going into this.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. All right, overall today, I want to just focus a little bit more on the later stages of your rehab and throwing program, and ultimately returning to pitching. Before we get there, I know it's a long time ago, 12 to 18 months, kind of some of those earlier stages, or let's just say like pre-throwing. Anything that really stood out to you about going through the TJ rehab that was maybe surprising or something that you learned going through it?
I think I learned a lot about myself from this surgery. You know, like I've said this earlier, but the rehab process, it allowed me to take a step back and do a lot of observing, which I really like to do.
Yeah.
I found that out about myself really early, that I liked asking questions. I liked trying to ignite conversation, you know, between my coaches and my teammates, and have purposeful conversation, with bouncing ideas off one another about baseball, you know, sometimes even about life. But it's easy to do that when you give yourself the opportunity to take a step back and not be so headstrong, not be so ego driven about what you're talking about, but just listening to other people and allowing them to kind of share their ideas and then talk about those ideas. Moving forward. You know, what stood out to me about the early part of rehab was that it sucked. Flat out. But
very boring.
It's mundane.
Yes.
But it's also really important.
Yes.
You know, there's so many times where we came in here and it was range of motion work, it was soft tissue work, it was very light mobility, but it was all critical to set myself up to have success in the following months. You know, you don't want to set yourself back right away. And I think a really easy way to set yourself back is to not focus on those things, even though they're really boring, even though like you feel like you're making no progress. Just stick to that and know that it will take care of itself, because you got to set yourself up for success when time actually comes, push to shove. It's one of the harder things about the rehab, I think, is the early stages, having to get over the early stages mentally and physically. But once you get over the first hurdle, it puts you in a really good spot moving forward.
No, you just can't. Exactly, you can't skip steps. It's like it sucks and it's boring, but like, you know, it's like the old cliche is like, you know, it's like the foundation for your house. If you build this gorgeous house on like an unstable foundation, a year, 5 years, 10 years, it's gonna collapse. And then if you don't do that little stuff right, then you just don't have a good elbow. You might get back and pitch for a year, but it's not gonna hold up forever.
I remember so many times getting worked up about not hitting a certain range of motion in my session, going home frustrated, just with lack of progress. I was like, what the, like what could have I done differently today? And it was hard mentally not to see any progress, and especially in my case, I kept comparing it to my prior surgeries, thinking I was like, oh, if I just push it, it'll be fine. It's like, no, it's not an ACL. You have to give it its own time, it's its own beast. And I found this quote during actually that process was that the comparison is the thief of joy. And when you compare yourself to other things, you rob yourself of the progress you're actually making. And kind of the now moment that is, you don't give yourself time to enjoy that. So once you eliminate the comparison, I think a lot of good things really come out of that.
No, that's awesome. All right, well, let's kind of skip ahead. We'll skip like 6 months of rehab. But just a lot of strengthening, a lot of, you know, again, a lot of excitement, but let's get to what everyone's excited about, and that's throwing a baseball again. So as we jump into that return to throwing program, how did you physically and mentally know that you were ready to throw, and kind of what types of things were you doing before you actually picked up a baseball?
I wanted my strength levels to be as normal or as close to normal before I started to throw. I think it took around 4.5 months to complete the range of motion and to feel comfortable moving weight. But then it was trying to add strength. It was trying to get back to baseline. And it kind of took 4.5 months to achieve all of that. At that point, I started the return to throw program very gingerly. It was all, I mean, I remember those first throws, I mean, for lack of a better word, felt awesome. But at the same time, they were so light, it's like, oh, I feel like I should be doing more. But knowing that I was still in a place of vulnerability in terms of re-injury, so I just had to be patient and, you know, kind of stick to the program. What was the process like of kind of figuring out what return to throwing program to follow? I know this is something that you and I have talked about extensively. Yes.
And there's no right, and I think I've told you this probably more times than you'd like to hear, there's no one right way to tackle it.
Right.
So how did you decide on how to structure your return to throwing program?
And it's, like you said, it's not a cookie cutter kind of thing. And with this, I also try to get as much information as I could. I reached out to a lot of different people who I know who had Tommy John, who dealt with Tommy John, PTs, friends, players, to just try to get opinions on what worked for them, what did not work for them. There's a ton of options to choose from, volume-based, intensity-based, and distance-based, or any combination of those three.
Yes.
Ultimately, I ended up working with a combination of those three, which was all of those three.
Yeah.
Kind of wave loaded. To measure the intensity of my throws, I would use the driveline pulse, which I know you're a big fan of, and then just a radar gun to help monitor the stress of my elbow, the torque I was putting on my elbow, and how fast I was releasing the ball on a day-to-day basis. Which I had a lot of help in making that program. I know I bounced a lot of ideas off a lot of different people.
Yeah, which is really important. I think what you did well was you asked questions, you took advice, you stuck to a process. Sometimes when people ask a lot of questions and are an active participant, which is what we want, it's great. But the only time people get in trouble is when they jump around. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna try this program, and okay, I'm gonna go over and do this thing and that thing. It's like you went down a path and then you stuck with that, and that's the key. Is I say there's no wrong throwing program, but that might be the only wrong one, is to try 8 different ones, right? Rather than just sticking with kind of one overall approach as we go. And then I think the feedback is the other crucial thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people skip. It's just you need something other than just distance. It's most simple. It's like RPE at a distance, but something objective, especially an athlete of your caliber with velocity, some type of monitoring, just to give yourself the feedback so that you actually know you're doing more or less on a given day. Otherwise, the easy days accidentally turn into medium days, and the medium days turn into hard days, and the hard days turn into way too hard. And
you don't need to do that to yourself. It's just, I think part of trusting the throwing program is trusting who you're working with for the throwing program. And I know I work with you. I also work with my PT back up in Madison, Alex, who did a great job. I know we bounced a lot of ideas off of each other, and kind of work as a team to put me in a good position constantly, which I could be more thankful.
Yeah, no, that's great. So how did your elbow feel during the throwing program? Great every day? Did you have any setbacks, anything like that?
It certainly was not great every day. For the longest time, it was tight. And honestly, I was like, this is going to be the new normal. It's just constant elbow tightness. But it wasn't, luckily. There was residual a little bit here and there. But for the most part, it feels pretty loose on a day-to-day basis. Kind of get over that is just to trust that throwing process and trust that you're in good hands and keep going. I know I suffered a setback around month 6 or 7. There was one of the throws that just didn't feel right. I was like, all right, let's take a step back again and kind of reassess where we're at with the throwing program and with what we're doing with the throwing program. Are we paying attention to the throwing program every day? But once we solved that problem, it was kind of like, hey, let's really hunker down now, and that allowed me to have a pretty smooth rest of the recovery, which then hand in hand turned around and allowed me to participate this season.
Yeah,
which is thankful.
Yeah, and I think it's just good to hear. I don't know, there's this, I don't know if it's an expectation, but just a lot of people think oh, my arm's gonna feel awesome during this whole throwing program, it's just gonna keep feeling better and better, and it's
because I got the surgery done.
Yeah,
can't do anything to hurt me now.
Exactly. And
that's not true.
No, and it's just not. It's it doesn't feel normal, and but you just have to stick with it. And I always try to get people to like look at trends, not individual days. Like I think if you ride the roller coaster of like today was a great day, now I'm sore, so now I'm like down in the valley, like you're just not gonna get anywhere. Like you've got to look at times like a month ago, like I always tell people like in the early stages, like okay, think back to how those first 45-foot throws felt, and like now go throw a ball at 45 feet, and you like feel like easy that is. Like you made so much progress. Like I know your elbow doesn't feel great yet, but just like stick with it. And I think that's don't be stupid and push through pain and soreness and elbow swelling. Like don't be ridiculous either. But
and I think that's a huge part of the process is time and place, knowing when to push.
Yes.
Those first few months, easy. All right, you are returning the throw. It is supposed to be simple. It is supposed to be light. It is supposed to be, reintroducing your elbow to the stimulus of throwing, which is a dangerous act in itself. No way around it. But it can be a lot less dangerous if you listen, if you buy into what's being said, if you give yourself the time to think about what's being said and not putting so much emphasis on I need to get this done now.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, did you try to make any changes mechanically during your throwing process, and if so, like what and how'd you go about trying to incorporate those new feels?
Yeah, I would constantly try to make changes to my mechanics, sometimes too much.
Yeah.
But I touched on this before. My sequencing was not where I wanted to be in terms of front foot strike and arm position at front foot strike. So I put a heavy emphasis on kind of where my arm was positioned, where it was moving in space, throughout the motion. I created or tried to create a little bit of shoulder tilt. I was very focused on trying to clean up my lead leg block and back hip rotation, and all of which is still a work in progress.
Yeah.
I'm still working on the same things I was working on in really early time of John rehab, just at a higher intensity now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what throwing is all about, is that you throw with a purpose every time you throw a baseball. And I'm a huge believer in that, is that every throw counts. Whether you're working on something small or working on something big, just try to work on one thing at a time, take one thing at a time, and really focus on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
For that small moment.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. I think it's just every any high school players that are listening, like we've had college players on this podcast, we've had pros on this podcast, all talking about mechanical things. And what you'll notice is they're not taking a pitching lesson on Tuesday and trying to just incorporate this into their game on Saturday. Like it is a process. And
it's a lengthy process. It's a timely process. Yeah. It's not something that's boom, quick fix.
Yes.
Because unless you want it to be a quick fix, you're gonna have to think about it nonstop, practice it nonstop, and we just don't have the time for that in baseball, especially being throwers.
Exactly.
And pitchers more specifically. So it's hard, but you gotta give yourself time to make that adjustment.
Yes, it's just consistency over time, making these little tweaks is eventually how it sticks. All right, my next favorite question to ask people: how many bullpens before you threw in a game?
Oh boy, a lot.
Yes.
Too many frustrated me. But I want to say it was probably around some crazy number, like 15, 20.
Yeah.
Which maybe isn't that crazy for time of John rehab, but it was so, like looking back at it, it was so slow. It was like, oh, another bullpen today. When do I get hitters?
Yeah.
For another 2 months. Darn. Like,
yeah.
You just kind of a little bit defeated, but a little bit like you still, like what we said, you got to remind yourself that, hey, you're on a mound now, and you get to be on a mound now.
Yeah.
Like last month, you weren't even throwing, this amount of distance. Now look at all the progress we made.
Yeah.
So just try to remind yourself that you're on a mound, you get to throw off a mound, and
Yeah.
Go from there.
I think that's key. And again, it's one of those things that for whatever reason, and kind of the classic mistake that we see high schoolers make, in my opinion, is like, oh, they get back on a mound, they throw one pen, it's like, well, why can't I pitch in a game yet? It's like, well, like.
No, I found myself having a lot of those thoughts. Like, I'm ready. Like, no,
Yeah.
you're not.
Yeah, but I mean, what did you kind of notice over just the course of doing that? Do you feel like arm got more in shape, got a little bit sharper? Like, how was it? I know it's frustrating, but did it end up being helpful? Were you glad you waited that long?
No, everything improved.
Yeah.
Everything improved. Gave myself that amount of time to be on a mound. Gave me time to relearn the mound. It gave me time to familiarize myself with how my body moves off the mound, down the slope. How I need to sequence my body, sequence my movements to deliver consistent strikes, which I love doing. I love moving off a mound. I love learning. I love feeling how my body moves off the mound and trying to improve just a little bit each pitch. I would not change that at all. I think giving myself time to work off the mound is an extremely important part in my process. And it really set me up for where I am right now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Anything that you're gonna take out of this Tommy John rehab process, just going forward in your career as a pitcher, to whether it's perform better or even just hopefully stay healthy for the long run, that was like something that you didn't do before that you're for sure gonna do now going forward?
The big thing that I learned during the process was I need to supplement my body with things that are good for me. In high school, my diet was trash, just flat out trash. And I know I've dealt with some, crazy eating things. And I haven't had the greatest relationship with food, but over the time, I've given myself the opportunity to have a good relationship with food, or at least a better relationship. So I'm trying to do what's good for my body. I think that if I do things that are good for my body, my arm will tend to feel better.
Yeah.
If the body feels good on a day-to-day basis, I think the arm will continue to follow that trend. Now, I know in throwers is a little bit different, but I still think if you treat your body with respect, I think that the arm will pay dividends with that.
Yeah.
So just try to take care of myself, take care of my body, let my body tell me what I need to focus on. After I give it a chance to take care of itself, I'm a big believer in the human body being a extremely gifted and smart organism. So I think that letting the body take care of itself, giving it its time to run its course over everything, is a huge thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Any last pieces of advice for somebody that's going through Tommy John rehab right now? Little motivational tips or guidance?
They might all be cliche, but cliches are cliche because they're true. Stay the course, trust the process. It is grueling in almost all aspects. Taxing mentally, it's wearing physically, and it just drains you spiritually. But there's people in your corner, always. Use them. Don't be afraid to lean into your support system. They're there for you. They want to see the best for you. The PTs, your family, your friends, everyone around you, coaches, you want to see you have success, and they're there to help you.
Yeah.
Lean into that. But don't be afraid to trust yourself. Don't be afraid to push yourself. It's a tough recovery, but I think talking about things and knowing when to do certain things, the timely aspect of it is really big.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Okay, unfortunately, you're the first person I get to ask this question to. But it's one of the most common questions that we get from people going through ACL rehab or people going through Tommy John rehab is which one's harder, ACL rehab or Tommy John rehab? And you are one of the special, unique few that have done both. So once and for all, what's harder, ACL rehab or Tommy John rehab?
Both suck. Both are really hard. But I'm in no position to call the ACL rehab fun.
Yeah.
Because it was hard. But I think that with TJ, for me at least, it's a lot of just sitting out and not competing. In ACL, I think you get to compete a little bit more with change direction, agility, and speed. Tommy John, you feel really good at the 5-month mark.
Yeah.
But you get slapped on the butt, slapped in the face with reality of like, hey, yeah, you are good to function, but you're a thrower, you're a pitcher. You don't get to function fully yet.
Yeah.
So I think Tommy John would have to take the cake on that being a harder rehab, purely from the standpoint of it's really, really hard mentally on you being a baseball player.
That's a very interesting perspective. That's not something that I think most people are just thinking of like pain levels and stuff like that, but I've never thought about it that way, that at that 5-month mark, ACL, you're starting to have more fun, you're getting to do more stuff, and like Tommy John, you're getting to like throw at 45 feet
Yes.
by yourself for the most part. So
at that point, you're good with your strength training,
Yeah.
you feel strong in the gym, and then you get out to the field and you're like, all right, what's my throwing today? 70 feet.
Awesome.
It's just like, okay.
Yeah,
So-
that's interesting. That's a really good perspective. All right, well, what's next for Eli Hoyt? You're done at Madison, so what do we got going on this summer, and what's going on next year?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is to stay healthy. I think nearly everyone I've come in contact with the last 3 years that I've parted ways with, have said, hey, stay healthy.
Yeah.
Which is like,
Trying.
thank you, I'm trying. But what's next for me is that I want to do that. I want to stay healthy, but I also really want to get back to compete at that really high level that I believe I can compete at. And I think this summer is a really good opportunity. I'll be playing for the Madison Mallards, which is an awesome atmosphere, really good summer league team in the Northwoods. And then I have a chance to represent Team USA over in Amsterdam this summer, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
And as far as next year goes, these next 2 years of eligibility, I'm excited to see what comes.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of good opportunities. I'm excited to meet a lot of new people and get a lot of different opinions.
Yeah, we're excited to follow on and see where you go, and good luck this summer. Maybe we'll have to sneak out and catch a Mallards game and watch you pitch. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. So, all right, man. Well, thank you so much for the time and the perspective. I think you have a really unique just vantage point on going through this, and appreciate you sharing it with everyone. And hopefully if you're someone that's listening, that's whether it's Tommy John or some other rehab, you can take some little nuggets from Eli's story, and I think he's always had a really good approach to overcoming this stuff and return to play and compete at a high level. So hopefully some of these things resonate with you. And thanks again for the time. Thanks you guys for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, dude.
I remember opening this up last night. I was like, all right, let's.
I know.
Get some good questions in here.